We are so tiny in comparison to your vastness. And yet you still look upon us and cherish us. Even though we sin, you still value us. We confess our sin to you, and you will wipe it clean. Today we ask blessings on Kathy as she teaches us about your prophet from long ago named Elijah. Be with her mind and give her clarity. Guide her hands and her signs so that we can fully understand. Help us not to be distracted, but to pay attention to her and through her to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. This person here is called, are you ready? Yep. This person is called Ahab. And this is Elijah, who we're going to sign as the king under prophet. Ahab is a bad king. I'm going to condense it to K-A going across my chest like the king. The people all around Israel started disregarding God and going astray. They were worshiping idols. So the prophet Elijah got a message from God. And he went to tell King Ahab, there will be no rain in the next few years until I say so. No rain at all. And this is a punishment to King Ahab, for worshiping the idols, the false gods. So there was a famine in the land. You can see even the cattle were having trouble because the soil was failing them. All there was sand. So for 3 years, there was no rain and no harvests. All the harvests failed, and everywhere in the land there was hunger and thirst. People craved water. Elijah, he escaped. He was led to Kirith, a ravine there, where he was fed by the birds, by ravens. These desert birds brought him food, even though the water around had dried. So when the water was completely dried, what he had to do was God told him he needed to travel north. He's going from Kerith Ravine, now he's traveling up north, and there's a woman there, a widow. And he was happy that God was telling him where to go, to Zarephath. And this is the 3rd year where there had been no rain at all. 3 years like this. So finally God told Elijah, go, present yourself before King Ahab. I have a question. Why did Elijah hide? Why did he run away and hide? King Ahab, there's famine all throughout Israel. People were thirsty, they're hungry. And so God sent him to the north where the birds could feed him so he would stay alive. Where there would be water for him to drink, so he wouldn't be thirsty. And then when the water ran out, then he had to go to the widow who would have a place where she could feed him and provide him with drink. the punishment was for Israel and to punish King Ahab. Because they'd gone astray. They were worshiping the wrong gods. Thomas has a question. And the king wanted to kill him. That's why he ran away. Because he wanted to stay alive. Yep, right. So the reason why Elijah ran away was he's afraid the king was going to kill him. Just like they'd killed many other prophets preceding him.
King Ahab, he wanted to kill Elijah. Why? Because Elijah had prophesied the end of the rain, and King Ahab was angry. He wanted to kill him for the end, for the drought that Elijah prophesied.
And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. So here we can see where Elijah traveled. All the way up there to Zarephath in the north. And Kerith Ravine's also up there. So Zarephath is where the widow fed him bread and provided him a place to stay and things to drink so that he could be satisfied. And when he was satisfied, then everything worked out. And then the Lord told Elijah, go back to Mount Carmel. And he sent him there to Mount Carmel. So from Zarephath, he traveled down south to the land of Israel. And King Ahab had been seeking out Elijah because the people wanted food, they wanted water, and they'd been praying to Baal. This is a false god. Praying and worshiping this idol, wanting him to respond and provide them with food and water to drink. Because they thought that this God controlled the weather and the harvest. So they're like, hey, where's our food? But understand, this is a fake God. And here we see the oxen, the animals needed food and drink as well. So the king called on higher up Obadiah. And he said, okay, the king told him, go to the springs and the valleys of the land. Let's find some grass to keep the horses and the mules alive. So Obadiah, he trusted the Lord. But he still had to obey the king. But he still trusted God. Now understand, here's about the king's wife, Queen Jezebel. She had ordered that all the Lord's prophets be killed. Obadiah hid 100 prophets, 50 in one place, in a cave, and then another 50 prophets hid in a separate cave. So there are two different caves going on here. And he provided food to both groups. So then King Ahab and Obadiah split up. And they were searching for water supplies. As they're walking along, Obadiah encounters Elijah. It's like, oh, Elijah, is that you? There's Elijah over there. And here's Obadiah. They met up. And Obadiah was like, is that really you, Elijah? And Elijah says, yes, it's me. Sure. I'm Elijah. Go tell King Ahab that I'm here. So Obadiah, like, hey, Elijah, you've got to promise you're going to stay put. Stay right where you are. So I'm going to go and get King Ahab, but you have to stay while I leave, okay? And he's really concerned about Elijah because, Queen Jezebel wants to kill all of the prophets. So Obadiah hurries off. He's running. Finally, he finds King Ahab. And he tells him, I found Elijah. You've been looking and looking for him, and I finally found him. So here's what he says. So there's Obadiah, King Ahab, Elijah, and Elijah is scolding the king. When the king sees Elijah, he's accusing him and blaming him. He's like, why are you making all this trouble? Why are you not allowing it to rain? Why are you giving us drought and famine? It's all your fault. And the king leveled all these accusations at Elijah, and Elijah wasn't saying anything. And then he said, no, it's not me who made the trouble, because you were the one ignoring God. You were the one turning astray to worship all these idols and bowing down and crying out to them for the water. You didn't follow any of the Lord's commands. Remember, Baal here is the name of that idol. So then King Ahab is having this conversation. Okay. And Elijah says, bring together the people from Israel. They need to meet me at Mount Carmel. Up there, on top. And Elijah required, hey, King Ahab, you need to bring 450 Baal worshippers, and then another 400 who worship Asherah, which is another false god. So altogether, that's 850. And I'm going to be the sole worshiper of the Lord in comparison to the 850. So here's King Ahab, and we call this the Baal idol. See, it looks like a cow. And he proclaimed throughout Israel for the people to assemble on Mount Carmel. The 450 from the group who worship Baal, and then the other 400 prophets of the false god named Asherah, they were called as well. And they all gathered together. He called them, he explained all of the prophets, and the people of Israel were there too. So here he is explaining everything, and here's what he said. As he stood on Mount Carmel, he asked, how long in one hand are you going to hold on to the false prophets? And then here I am, the only prophet of the Lord. If Baal is the true God, then worship and follow him. And if the Lord is God, if he proves himself to be God, then you should worship him. But you have to decide which one you're going to follow. You need to make the decision between the two, between these two worlds. And the people had nothing to say in response. continues to explain. Elijah says, hey, out of all of Israel, I am the only prophet left with the Spirit of the Lord. And here are these 850 who are opposed to me. Now, take a bull and take 2 separate bulls. We're going to prepare these in separate places. Okay, we're going to build an altar out of wood and cut the bull into pieces. Okay, so you 850, you prepare your altar and your bull, and I'll cut my wood up and prepare my sacrifice on the other side. Now I warned you, do not ignite a fire. It's not allowed that you ignite a fire. You have to call on your God to set the sacrifice aflame. And then I will call on my God to burn up my sacrifice. And the God who answers, whether it's Baal or the Lord, whichever one sets there's a fire, that's the real God. So everybody agreed to that challenge, that competition between the 2 gods. So here are the prophets, they're calling and walking on their God and circling their altar as the morning progresses all the way to noon. And they're going around their altar and circling it and dancing. They're crying out, Baal, Baal, answer us. And still, there was no answer. The idol Baal didn't do anything. As they danced around and around their sacrifice, they say, answer us, bring the fire. And they continue to circle their altar. And he's grinning as he's watching and making fun of those prophets. He's just laughing at them and mocking all of these prophets of Baal. He says, oh, well, is your God real? Maybe he's not paying attention. Maybe he's too busy. Maybe he's off traveling. Maybe he's deep in thought. Oh, maybe he's asleep. Oh, he doesn't hear your prayers. You need to wake him up. So he was making fun of those prophets. He's like, come on, wake up your God. Tell him, oh, you forgot to set your fire. Wake him up. So as the day progressed, and they're continuing to persist in calling on their God, here's what they did. They cried out with loud voices. Elijah told them, hey, you need to cry out really loud. Maybe he'll notice you. So they took their swords and they started slashing themselves on the flesh. So their blood was running down to try to get the attention and try to get an answer from their God to send the fire. And they're crying out and pleading with him so desperately, but he's giving them no answer. He is not responding with fire as they wait. He's not paying attention to their cries and their pleading. They're as they beg and yell out to him. Finally, the prophets give up. They're like, okay, it's your turn, Elijah. And he says, all right, let's proceed. Elijah, there he is as a prophet. He took 12 urns of water, 4 jars of water. I'll explain here a bit. 12 stones. That's urns. So he called the people around him. They built the altar. It had been messed up before. So he took stones, 12 stones, and assembled them. And why 12 stones? What does that represent? that represents the 12 tribes. So it's interesting, he's representing these. God would know the significance of that the 12 represents the 12 tribes, so they have 12 stones. And then around that stone structure, they dug out a trench. That's like a moat. It goes all the way around. They dug up an area around till it was a bit deep. And then they put the flesh of the sacrifice on the wood. And he's like, okay, guys, bring me 4 large jars of water. Fill them all the way up. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to pour it all over here. But he wasn't satisfied when that was done. He required they do it 3 total times. Each time, that's 4 jars. So 4 times 3 is how many? Then we have 12. Representing those 12 tribes again. He knew what he's doing. He's following God's instructions. So it's really interesting how he continues to tie in the 12 tribes. Okay. Just a moment. Now, not only does doing that show what God's doing, but he's also showing it to the people. He's reminding all of them who they are, who the people are of Israel, right? Because this is happening in Israel. This is not in a foreign land. This is in Israel. So he's showing them, remember who you are. Remember, you are the tribes of God. So he's helping the people reconnect, be reconciled back to God. And then Marcus has to say.
That moat around there. That stone over there. 12 tribes of people.
But they would want that water to drink. They're seeing all that water and they're thinking, oh, I want to drink all that water. We don't want to pour it on the sacrifice. And he really did work. He remembered that. Do you understand what he was saying? I think Mary Beth has something else to say. Okay, so here we see the wood. We see the 12 stones. Here's the flesh that's been cut up and laid upon it. Now remember, Elijah has poured water all over the meat. It's flown over the wood. It's encircling the altar in this trench. And then he prays, God, Lord, let it be known today that you are the God of Israel. You are their God, right? And I am your servant. I am acting on your behalf and doing what you have commanded me to do of all these things. Answer me so these people will know that you are God, the true God. And so the people of Israel will be brought back to you. Okay? Did you see all that flame? God commanded the flame to show up on all that water. Despite the 12 jars of water, the Lord instantly set it aflame. The wood burned up, the stones, the soil all around it. And completely evaporated all the water from the trench. All the water was gone, and the people were amazed. They saw the stones Wood crumbled to ashes.
Oh.
And the altar was completely demolished. And everybody stared in shock. And the Israelites said, "You are the true God, and Baal is false. He is nothing. Truly, the Lord is God. He is the true God. The Lord himself is God." So what were they to do with those 850 prophets? They seized all of them. And Elijah ordered for the prophets of Baal, all to be taken, they're thrown to the Kishon Valley, where they would all be killed. And the blood would flow down in that valley of all of those 850 prophets who were killed. They're all going to be in that valley. And that's so that they couldn't lead the people of Israel astray to worship those false gods anymore. This was a punishment to all of those prophets for being against the true God. Because they were teaching the people to worship and follow the idols instead of following the true God.
Go ahead, Dana.
What? Now, which person is that?
Yeah, First King.
Where's that from? First Kings. Let me look up the reference.
Yeah, First King.
I don't remember exactly.
Chapter 15.
Where in the Bible is that from? Sorry, okay, you know, can you take off the lid from my vegetables, please, Father?
Say again.
Yeah.
Verse again. What the verse?
Say the verse again, please.
Dana.
Okay, I found the story in 1 Kings, chapter 17 and 18 and 19. Okay. 17, 18, and 19. That's in 1 Kings, chapter 17, chapter 18, chapter 19. It's a lot of information. You have to read through several columns to see the whole story. Okay, Marcus had something to say? So, is that the same valley where they killed David? No, they're killing the prophets because they were lying to all the people. All 850? Elijah commanded it. The king didn't command that the prophets be killed. This was Elijah's command. Oh, because they lost? Because their God wasn't successful? They won? Elijah wanted the people to return back to God, to confess that they had been doing wrong. Admit that they were sorry. We'll explain more about the king later. And when we learn about Elisha, who follows up behind Elijah. You're going to find out more about King Ahab and his wife Jezebel. So you'll have to wait for the rest of the story for next week. Okay, are we ready to read more? I have a question. Who came up with the idea of Baal? Or who built the idol itself? Like, who came up? Who commanded them to worship these false gods? You know, God never commanded that worship. That's like, you know, like if you build a castle, like, oh, that's so beautiful, I'll worship that. But we can't say, oh, that's my God. Baal is kind of the same as that calf that they built when they left Egypt. They like something they can see.
Baal was one of the gods of the people that lived in Canaan before the Israelites came in. It was one of the gods of the harvest, and then Asherah, that other one that was named, was a fertility god. And those were two of the gods that the Israelites got sort of lured away into false worship. That's what they focused on.
Really, Baal is a false god. Baal is a false god. He's not the real God. False god. With a little g. And from King Jezebel, she's a foreigner from the Israelites, and she married King Ahab. And she brought the foreign god into the land. And that led the king of Israel, this is the king of Israel, and led him and the Israelites away from God, the true God, and they worshiped the false God. So God, the true God, did not approve of this. And so he sent Elijah to hold the rain for 3 years to prove that Baal is not the real God.
False god.
And we realized,
What?
I had a question for you. I'm wondering about Solomon. Remember him? And he got involved with all these different women who tempted him with other gods, and some of the women he married, they led Solomon astray into worshiping these wrong gods too. Could that be continuing into this time? So it really originated more with Solomon, that he was taking them astray, even though he was such a wise man. And remember, like we learned previously, when the Israelite people crossed over the River Jordan, going into the Promised Land with Joshua, remember? They were supposed to conquer all of the people who lived in the area, but they didn't. They were not successful with that, and they did not defeat all of those people. So those people who were still living in the region intermingled. And do you remember what happened in the book of Judges? Do you remember what took place? The people would worship God. Oh, we love you, God. And then they'd get distracted by the people who lived in the land. And they would start to worship the idols. And then God would send a judge, a leader, to witness to the people, to reconcile them to God, so they'd have that relationship again. And it was a cycle that went on time and time again. And over the centuries, it continues to happen, and it's still happening again with the Israelite people. They still look and they're paying attention to God, and like, oh yeah, God, you're great. And then they turn aside and they begin worshiping false gods again.
So King Ahab failed as a king to Israel because he married Jezebel and then worshipped her idol and encouraged all the people of Israel, come on and worship the idol. I'm going to build this house to this idol and build these temples to the god Baal, and that was a failure of Israel.
Right. Exactly. And you'll hear more about that later.
So I have, in my family, I have my brother, and we went walking in the mountains, and it was I was really thirsty. There wasn't any water. So looking around, and there was no water. So what do? Worship God, and He led us to a lake. And there was water there at that lake, and we were able to drink that water, and that saved our lives. We cried out to God, and He led us to the water.
Right. has something to say.
To apply our lives today. So we have tendencies to look away, to not follow God, to look for things, to start worshiping. So we always see that happening. We turn away, we need to turn back to God. We know so. So we apply that to our lives now. Keep our focus on the Lord, not get into the distractions of worldly things. Let's turn back to God. Hey.
Oh, you know, the world, a big idol in the world is what today? TV. Watching TV. We watch too much TV. It's all right to watch some TV, but we watch way too much TV, and we're distracted from that. Plus, we pay attention to the actors, and we want to follow them, and they're kind of like our idol worship. So movies and music and all these stars can become modern day idols because we give our attention to them and we give our time to them, and we don't give our time to God.
Recently I noticed we were talking about you have to choose which one you're going to follow. And if you follow God, there are blessings. God will help you through your struggles if you're struggling for Him. Calling you on to the finish line. If we have faith, you know, He wants us to have faith to persevere with Him.
It is very important to give God time to read the Bible, to pray, to when we do that, we'll have less temptations, we'll have less chaos in our lives, and also it helps us remember Him, that He is with us. It is important for us to give Him time. So Charlotte says, recognizing Baal, he's like the god of success. So many of the people at that time, they worked as farmers. And so they tried to grow things, and they wanted to be successful in growing their crops. So in our culture, the thing that we value the most, the thing that people, when we first meet somebody, the first question that we ask is, what do you do? What is your job? So it's the same. We identify ourselves with our work. So the people, they were following the God that will help them be successful. So they would follow Baal for the resources that Baal could give. And so it's the same with the Asherah, following the god Asherah, because Asherah would provide children, and the fertility was important at that time to have the children. So for us, we want to earn money. We want people to respect us for our work. So we need to be careful when we meet people how we identify ourselves. Is our most important identity of ourselves our work? Or is the most important thing that identifies us is that we follow God? Which one is most important?
Like when I worked at BSDB, I really followed God, and I obeyed Him no matter what was going on. And He took care of me and helped me through my work, to be patient with it, through everything that happened when we had struggles. It wasn't easy working with the students at BSDB for 31 years, and I look back, and God truly blessed me for persevering in that work. And Faithfully has something to say? Oh, Marcus does.
Last comment from Marcus. My dad worked really hard. He worked really hard he sowed the ground, and my brother and I worked really hard growing the produce. And then we noticed that there was no water. But he had a key. So we went to
We went to report to a worker there about
oh,
that it had been closed, the irrigation had been closed.
and said, sorry, you need to be patient for 3 days a week until it would open. And we said, oh, okay. So whose land is it? It was federal land, and it was, the government closed that water would be closed. And then finally they opened up the water so that we could water the land. And everything had turned to yellow because it was so thirsty. And it was hard, it's a hard world.
Always from the town.
Okay, everyone ready? I have one more picture, well, really a video. One video. Do you want to stop because because of the pictures?
You want to show it?
Yeah, we go back.
So,
We go back.
I saw it.
Go
Yeah.
back a bit.
If you want to show it, I can.
If we go back,
I got it.
yeah, and then click on it.
But I can't videotape that video, so if you have comments on it, maybe you could leave a link for people.
I mean,
You want me to sign in
you,
for this?
video.
But I can't videotape that.
So you say, if you want
to see the video,
click on the
click
link.
on this link, and we can just
You
leave it
say
there.
that, so I can,
That way I can video that.
King Ahab and his evil queen Jezebel.
I didn't mean to start
Sorry.
that, sorry.
hold on, first you start it, and then,
The X-Files.
Do you want me to say it too, or do you want to?
Okay, you have to say, if you want to see the video, click on the link.
Faith on the
no, I mean, stop.